Hello and welcome to On the Table. We are broadcasting on RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel 123, which is also live streaming on YouTube. I'm your host, Mona Priya. Malaysia is a highly trade-dependent economy, with exports and imports contributing significantly to the GDP. Now, the country maintains a consistent trade surplus driven by strong exports of electronics, palm oil and energy products. Today, on the table, we discuss Malaysia's trade performance and economic outlook for 2025 with Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, Chief Executive Officer from the Centre for Market Education. Welcome to the program, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Doctor, let's begin with a general perspective. And I want to mention about Bank Negara Malaysia recently releasing a report where it was announced that Malaysia's economy grew by 5.1% for 2024. With inflation staying low at a manageable 1.8%. Now, how would you describe Malaysia's economic performance in 2024, and what factors do you think contributed to this growth?
Well, you see, the performance was undoubtedly good, but not just because of the number per se. Okay, so I always invite the reader not to stop at that 5, 10, 8%, but to go and see how that number was generated. Which ones are the components that drove that growth? Because we could have a plus 20% built on government spending, finance through external debts, and it would be a stellar performance in the GDP, but a very unsustainable one.
That's right.
The good side from the performances in 2024 is that for the first time in many years, we see investment taking the lead in terms of growth performance.
Okay, and that's good news.
So it's very good because investments means building wealth, building future growth, building employment, building prospects for the future. Then if we look at the numbers, in almost all quarters, we had the performance on an annual basis above 10% in terms of growth. And this is very unusual for the Malaysian performances in the past years. So I think this is the most positive side that must be emphasized, and hopefully it will remain. We have seen a deceleration in the last quarter, actually for all the components of GDP, and this is something to keep on monitoring to see if this declining trend is going to be confirmed in Q1 or if instead we are going to restart on the upward trend.
Now, Doctor, exports have played a big role when it comes to driving Malaysia's economy. From your point of view, which sectors have been the key drivers for Malaysia's export growth in 2024? Yeah,
we can actually take a look at the official data from Matrade, and we can see that as it is normal to expect, the biggest chunk of export comes from E&E, so electronics product. They represent 40%, almost 40% of Malaysia's export, so almost half of it. So followed by petroleum products and palm oil, but E&E remains very strong to support around 8.5% annual growth of export for 2024.
Okay, and what are the other sectors that contribute significantly?
Yeah, as I mentioned, petroleum products, palm oil, but also there has been quite an interesting performance from agriculture products, in particular processed food, and as well optical and scientific equipment. So we have a little bit more diversification.
So that is a new trend that we are seeing.
It's a bit of a new, partially a new trend, let's say, although we must stress the strong role, 40% of E&E products.
Okay. Now, on the flip side, how has Malaysia's import performance been when it comes to year-on-year data? What are some of the main consumer goods that we are bringing in?
So, import grew faster than export for 2024, slightly more, so almost 9%.
Okay.
So it means we are importing more in value than what we are exporting.
Okay.
And again, E&E, if we look at the official data, remain the main contributor also
for imports.
Yeah, because of course we are talking about different kind of products for different for the same macro categories, but referring to different points in the supply chain of those products. Because in order to produce E&E products for export, Malaysia needs to import some other components to arrive at the product that is finally exported. It has to be said that obviously an international trade of a country is made of export and import. The ability to import is also it can be looked at from two different perspectives. So the fact that the country is unable to produce domestically certain things, but it also can be looked at the fact that the country has the financial strength to import what is not produced domestically.
Okay.
So, and then depends, of course, a much more disaggregate analysis is necessary to see which of these perspectives would be more appropriate for the case of Malaysia.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that the trend is rising when it comes to imports.
Yes.
What does it actually mean? Is it something to be concerned about, or is that something that you expected for 2024?
Well, is actually a trend that has been ongoing. If we look at the statistics, which I have here in front of me for quite some time. So we had a very strong growth in the trade balance during the first 2 years of the pandemic in 2020 and 2021.
Okay.
A growth of 30% in the trade surplus of Malaysia. Then it slowed down in 2022, but then in 2023 and in 2024 we had a strong decline of the trade surplus. We still remain a country with a surplus, but that surplus is narrowing. So in 2024, in absolute value, in terms of millions of Malaysian ringgit, it is at the same level where it was in 2019.
And speaking about trade surplus, we have been maintaining this trade surplus, exports exceeding imports. Now, what strategies had helped to sustain this positive trade balance, and do you see any risks or threats to that?
So, as I just mentioned, actually the trade surplus is declining. This is due also to the fact that China, in example, has become a country from which we tend to import more than what we tend to export.
That's right.
So this is one factor. And I think what to expect in the future is extremely uncertain because of the radical shift that we are observing in trade policies worldwide. So, to put it mildly. So we know that tariffs are coming on certain products. We have to see specifically how Malaysia will be affected. But it's not just the tariffs coming from the US, which remains a very important partner for Malaysia as total trade, but also which consequences these tariffs will have in the relationship between the US and China, and therefore the global
spillover effect in the region.
But the reshuffle of the supply chain. So to make real predictions is very complicated at the moment because the scenario is, I believe, very much open.
Very fluid.
Very fluid, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned E&E earlier, and I want to pick your thoughts a little bit on that. Now, we are the 6th largest semiconductor exporter in the world, and as you mentioned earlier, the US did announce plans to impose tariffs, very high tariffs, on imported semiconductor. So how do you think that is going to affect us? I know you said it's fluid and all of that, but would that have a very large effect, and should we be concerned?
Obviously, yes, it is something we should be concerned. Also, in general, for our trade relationship with the United States, which is still one of the top trading partners, and therefore they are applying a policy which risks to compromise that good relationship.
Okay.
And it's something that we should not look at favorably. But on the actual impact, there are a lot of things that are still uncertain because, okay, the United States can apply these duties. We need to see also the scale and to which products in terms of HS code, so more specifically. But then, so these products will become more expensive for the factories, for the producers in the US.
Okay.
And the real question is, how fast can the United States domestic production system face and readapt to the lack of import or to an import which is more expensive? So will the users of Malaysian products, the producers that use Malaysian products in the US prefer to keep on buying more expensive products, or they will source them domestically? And is this domestic supply indeed available? And how long will it take for that domestic supply to become able to produce what cannot be imported anymore, or what is more expensive to import? Because the economy is a real living organism, so things cannot change like this overnight. Okay, I don't buy from Malaysia, I can buy locally. But is their product locally available at a convenient price or not? And how long will it take for this readjustment to happen?
Okay.
So,
I understand.
Frictions are there.
Yeah, many factors that come into play.
Yes.
Okay, Doctor, we will be taking a short break and we will continue the discussion right after the break.
Fantastic.
And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
In 2025, Malaysia proudly leads the ASEAN community into a new era of unity, growth, and opportunity. Together with 10 Southeast Asian nations, Malaysia is driving progress in trade, innovation, sustainability, and tourism. Explore the best of Malaysia, from its stunning landscapes to its rich cultural heritage. Be part of global events, business summits, and exciting festivals throughout the year. Join us in 2025. Discover new connections, celebrate unity, and experience the future of Southeast Asia. ASEAN Malaysia 2025. Together, we rise.
Welcome back. We are speaking to Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, the CEO of the Centre for Market Education in Malaysia, and we are speaking about Malaysia's trade performance and economic outlook for 2025. Now, Doctor, let's continue the discussion. Let's look at ASEAN. How significant is Malaysia's role in regional trade, and who are our biggest trading partners right now?
Well, yes, ASEAN is a very important partner, the major trading partner for Malaysia. So again, let's look at the numbers, so bring some data there. ASEAN represents 29% of Malaysia's export, almost 24% of Malaysian import, and 26.5% of Malaysia's total trade.
Okay.
And within ASEAN, the main role is played by Singapore. Singapore represents almost 14% of Malaysia's total trade, and it is 15% of Malaysia export and 12% of Malaysia's import. So our relationship with Singapore is quite balanced, I would say. And then to move outside of ASEAN, then the two main trading partners, maybe you can expect that, or oddly enough, is for you to judge, are the two giants in the room, China and the United States.
Right.
So China represents almost 17% of Malaysia's total trade, 12.4% for the export, and 21.6% for import. So very, very important.
Okay.
So And the US instead represents 13% of Malaysia's export, 9% of Malaysia's import, and 11% of Malaysia's total trade. So ASEAN first,
Yes.
ASEAN dulu, with Singapore as the main trading partner, and then these two giants, China and the United States.
Okay.
With China playing an important role for Malaysia's import. Is almost 22% of Malaysia's import. This is a very significant data.
And does this significance play a role when it comes to the current global uncertainties? Because geopolitical tensions, economic instability, how big a threat are these factors, and what should we be prepared for?
Yeah, indeed, the issue is precisely this, that the US are playing the tariff card,
yes,
and this is going obviously to have a negative effect on Malaysia's export. Then we may think, let's look at China, but in this moment, China is for Malaysia's more of an import partner rather than still an important export partner, but US are more important than China as export destination, slightly more important. So I think that the challenge ahead for Malaysia is diversification. And in this, I think we have seen a very important and positively aggressive strategy from MITI and MIDA. Try to exploit opportunities.
What kind of opportunities are we talking about?
Where are the opportunities? Opportunities are to be where we are not. And I have in mind, in particular, the relationship that Malaysia has with the European Union. The European Union is a bloc of 27 countries.
That's right.
And in this moment, they play altogether a very, not insignificant, but smaller role in Malaysia's international trade, less than 8%. So given the importance of the European Union as a bloc, and given the size of their trade with Malaysia now, I think that is where we have chances for growth. If the European Union decide to also play a bit a different game in terms of regulation, I think that what is very important there is non-tariff barriers, so barriers that are made of regulation and compliances. So if the European Union smoothen its attitude on regulation, I think that we can get some good points from there.
So there are many opportunities which are left unexplored.
Yes.
And that actually brings me to the next question. So with other countries having issues and slowing down due to high interest rates, weak demand, and global tensions, this presents an opportunity for Malaysia to look at other avenues. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And not only Malaysia per se, but in this moment with Malaysia chairing ASEAN,
yes,
I think is an occasion for ASEAN as a bloc led by Malaysia to start to conceive a more unified role for themselves in the global scenario. So we have all this talking about blocs like BRICS and etc., but ASEAN still struggle to see itself as a bloc, which I think would be a much more interesting option rather than BRIC, which is not a bloc at all. BRICS are basically China plus, in particular for what Southeast Asia is concerned. While ASEAN is a much more diversified environment and probably a higher degree of coordination in terms of policies, in example, liberalizing movements of labor within the region, could create a global perception of the region as an investment destination, as a trading partner, as a bloc, rather than countries going satu-satu.
Okay, but doesn't that take time, Doctor? I mean, for ASEAN to consolidate itself and to move as a bloc?
It does, but for how long have we been discussing that? I think is the moment to go into some more practical step in that direction. If we never start because it takes time, then it will always take time. But the fact that it takes time should induce us to start doing something more practical and concrete in terms of policy coordination.
On that note, Doctor, you've been doing some good work in Indonesia. What are the trends that you're seeing when it comes to the policy changes and things like that?
Indonesia is a very contradictory country, I would say, and has this huge unexploited potential. It seems that it's always there to boom, and this boom also in attracting investment is not happening. Consider that foreign investments are in Indonesia at the moment at around 1.5% of the GDP. Okay. So a very small percentage. The other opposite is Singapore, where they play 30% of the GDP. So Indonesia has done a very big step with the Omnibus Law a few years ago, but many contradictions are emerging now also with the new government. It seems that they don't know yet where they want to go, and they still have, you see, it's a country where labor is abundant, the market is not yet mature and is huge, but they lack that final move to become a very attractive investment destination. And I have in mind in particular issues like the minimum paid up capital, which is required for foreign investors, which is still at $600,000.
Right. So if Indonesia works as a bloc with ASEAN, there's tremendous potential we're talking about.
Absolutely, and Indonesia could really play an important role as a market.
Okay, now, Doctor, coming off the momentum from 2024 and coming back to Malaysia, where do you see the biggest growth opportunities for us?
Malaysia, I think, needs to rediscover the vocation of becoming again a regional hub destination. So obviously Malaysia needs to consider the fact that it's a small country, so a small market in itself.
That's right.
With a very also mature labor market, so there is almost no unemployment, so it's very difficult to source labor. Some regulation has deteriorated in the past years in terms of the capacity of Malaysia to attract investors, and we are trying now somehow, I can see with in example, the new visa program for investors to revert that trend. This is a positive thing to be observed. Rediscover that vocation. So Malaysia as a regional hub, MIDA has done an incredible job in the past. So ease further regulation, recognize that this is the best place to build a regional scale business.
Any particular industry that you feel is still untapped?
I think E&E remains the main point
our biggest strength,
but where we should revert, and we partially started to do that, our trend on manufacturing. We have observed manufacturing. Right. So we have observed premature deindustrialization over the past decades, so the role of manufacturing has declined in the economy, and I believe that is where we should do something to rediscover also a manufacturing vocation.
What are your thoughts about agriculture?
Agriculture is a very important sector, fascinating one. I think the people look at agriculture from a wrong perspective, as going around spreading seeds among smelly animals.
We have a very typical outlook when it comes to agriculture, and we tend to think about the old school ways of doing things.
But instead, if we look at part of Malaysian agriculture that has been very modern recently, like the livestock industry for poultry. These industries are highly mechanized. They present a very high degree of innovation and importing high technologies. So it's not anymore as it was used to be.
That's right.
And where we could eventually apply reforms to go to a higher degree of automation and modernization is the rice industry, which is extremely fragmented, and we need to break that fragmentation if we want to bring in mechanization. And also, in example, the corn industry is another sector that has not been exploited enough in Malaysia, but could have some potential, and this would help also supporting the supply chain for the most successful livestock industry in Malaysia, which is the poultry industry.
Right. And I think with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, the government is also trying to bring that into developing the industry further.
This is already happening.
Yes.
And in example, just to come back to the poultry industries, if you go to the hatcheries, so where the eggs turn into baby chicken, these hatcheries are basically works now without human intervention, and all the internal process is data-driven, fully automated with sensors and data. Yeah. What is blocking other industries eventually to move in the same direction within the agriculture field is the size, the scale of the operators in that industry. So the fact that these industries are fragmented. Yes. The poultry industry could go there because it has gone through a certain degree of consolidation. So we have big players that plays also an international role in the production of chicken, and their size, so economies of scale, have made automation possible. Yeah.
Doctor, now we have got about 2 to 3 minutes left. I do want to ask you a final question on the ringgit performance. Now it is closely tied to trade. So based on the current trends, what's your outlook for the ringgit this year?
I think if we look at what happened last year, the ringgit has been subject to a strong devaluation and then a fast reappreciation. The currency, unfortunately, like all the things that happen in the stock exchange, doesn't really reflect the fundamentals of the economy. So it's more subject to sentiment and speculation. Okay. So the things that happened last year could happen this year as well. And we have seen what is happening with the Indonesian rupiahs. But this doesn't necessarily mean that the economy is bad. So it's a result of external forces at play which have very little to do with the fundamentals of the economy. Okay, so we need to really watch and see. Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Perlito, thank you so much for your time today and for all your valuable insights. It has been tremendously enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. And that's all the time that we've got for On the Table this evening. Now, we've been speaking to Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, CEO, Center for Market Education. A repeat of this episode's broadcast can be viewed again at the same time tomorrow and subsequent days on both RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel, as well as Berita RTM YouTube channel. Till next Thursday, where we'll discuss another topic of interest. I'm Mohana Priya. Thank you for your company.